Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. We have to learn to apply the principles of love to all the stuff that happens in life, all the struggles that we have. And that's what we do here at the Learning Love Podcast, is learn to apply the answer of love to all the questions that we have. Now, today we're going to talk about an important aspect of all of our relationships, because when we talk about building relationships within families, within communities, workplaces, churches, organizations, even as society, we're not just talking about one-on-one relationships. We are building a culture. Within a family, we have a family culture. We have a business culture. We have a regional culture, and we have a culture in countries. We even have a culture of humanity. No matter where you break it down on the large scale or the small scale, when we're building relationships, we are building cultures. And each one of these cultures has basically an operating system. It has ways that it operates. And even in healthy families, every family is a little weird, every family is a little quirky, has their own little oddities, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But that's why sometimes you can come from a perfectly healthy family, and you can go into a workplace and work with another person that came out of a perfectly healthy family, and you'll drive each other crazy. You will really struggle to get along, because the way you did things in your family can be vastly different than how they did it in their family, even though both worked. That's how culture happens. That's how culture works sometimes, is that it works within that particular group. It may not translate to another group. That's why it's so difficult sometimes to go to your neighbor's, Thanksgiving celebration with their family. Hey, it's great food and these people, but they have their own family culture of the way they do things. And it may feel odd compared to the way your family did Thanksgiving. Again, not a bad thing. Nothing wrong with it. It can be a great experience. It just feels weird because every group has their culture. But if we're going to have a healthy one, there's a few non-negotiables. It's fine to have flexibility here. It's fine to have different ways of doing things in different families, different organizations, different businesses. Some businesses are very casual. Everybody's laid back. They may have from their second floor to their ground floor, maybe they have a slide instead of stairs, because that's just the way they do things. They're just fun and whimsical. Other places are more buttoned up. They're more streamlined. They do things efficiently, and they don't want to have a lot of silliness going on. But hey, it still works. They may crank out a lot of good things and enjoy their work because they're highly productive. Different businesses can have different ways of doing things. Different families can have different ways of doing things. Different regions of the country can have their own quirky ways of doing things in that particular culture. It's fine. In fact, it's not just fine. We can celebrate that. We can celebrate differences, celebrate that, hey, you do it this way and my family did it this way, and we can laugh about it. And we can all just enjoy the ways in which we all operate. However, there are a few non-negotiables. If we're going to build a healthy culture, not just be together, not just find a way to get by or be productive in a business, but if we're going to have a healthy culture, there's a few ways it has to work within the operating system, a few non-negotiables. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at these non-negotiables of building a healthy operating system within your culture, wherever that culture lies. The first thing you have to have, if you're going to have a healthy culture, is dignity for everyone there. Everyone within your organization, your group, your family, your region has to be treated with and looked upon with dignity. In the policies, in the practices, in the routines, people need dignity. They need to be treated as if they are human. And when we develop cultures, and this can happen within a family, that there are people that are less than, that are the scapegoats, that are treated as lesser than the rest of the family. If we have a business where some people are the scapegoats, they are put upon, they are looked down upon within that culture, you're not going to have a healthy culture. There is never a way that we can treat people less than within a culture Now, that doesn't mean everybody has the same responsibility, doesn't mean everybody has the same pay scale at work, it doesn't mean everybody has the same title, but everybody's treated with dignity. That from the highest executive to the lowest person on that pay scale, from the patriarch of the family, the matriarch of the family, down to the children within that family, everyone has to be treated with dignity. That the way we do things allows people to be human, to be treated well, to have well-being within that culture. Anytime we lose that, we are not going to have a healthy culture. Dignity is a non-negotiable within any group. Doesn't mean that everybody has to be exactly equal in their responsibility or in their pay or anything like that. It just means that everyone has dignity. We have that as a default, as a basic baseline of our culture, that even if you are the lowest rung on that ladder of responsibility, if you're the child in that family, if you are the lowest person or the newest employee within that business, if you're the newest person to move in to the neighborhood and you have the least expensive house, you are still treated with dignity within that culture if you're going to have a healthy culture. That's non-negotiable. Dignity is absolutely required throughout the organization, throughout the family, throughout the business, throughout the culture of any kind in any region. Dignity is absolutely a must if we're going to be healthy. The second is truthfulness. We need to have a clear sense of truth. Now, that sounds easy enough, but it's not. Because within families, within businesses, within societies, within cultures of all kinds, we deal with things like misinformation and disinformation. Okay, misinformation is when we pass along information that is wrong, but we do it unknowingly. We just got this, we picked it up, we heard it, and we thought it was true, but it wasn't. Disinformation is when we intentionally give misleading or incorrect information to try to drive things a certain direction, to manipulate the situation. If a society falls, and I will go so far as to say if our American society falls, it's going to be because of disinformation and misinformation, because we can no longer trust. We can no longer have truthfulness. We don't know what that is. We have to have a sense of shared reality. It doesn't mean we always agree. It doesn't mean that we always understand someone else's point of view. We can have disagreements. In a recent show, I talked about how we deal with these disagreements, how we deal with intense disagreements between us when we just don't see things the same way. There's ways to deal with it. We don't always have to agree, but we have to have a sense of truthfulness, that we're getting authenticity, we're getting real information, that it's not manipulation, that it's not disinformation used to try to manipulate situations. That if we're going to have a healthy culture, we have to have truthfulness. All the way down to the family, this can be a problem. In dysfunctional families, very often lies and manipulation become part of the culture. That you don't know who you can trust. You don't know whether you can be honest or not. You don't know whether you can trust what a person is telling you, or are they trying to manipulate you and get you on their side so they can triangulate the argument against someone else. There's all kinds of little games that get played sometimes in dysfunctional families and in dysfunctional cultures. Truthfulness, a shared sense of reality, and a shared sense of trust are absolutely crucial. We may disagree, but we have to trust that we're all coming to it in a sense of fairness, in a sense of authenticity, that there is a good faith effort. Let me say that again, that there's a good faith effort to share in that reality, to give information that is accurate to the best of our ability. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but to the best of our ability, that we're never trying to manipulate, that there is truthfulness within the culture. That can be hard to do when we are trying to just get our way, when we're trying to win for our group and get that other group to lose. If we're trying to pit one department against another at work, when we want to build a healthy culture, truthfulness, a shared reality, a shared understanding, and an authenticity that always works against misinformation and disinformation. Absolutely crucial if we're going to have healthy connections and a healthy culture, from family to business to neighborhoods to society in general. we absolutely need to understand that what we're dealing with is a good faith effort towards the truth. The third is twofold: compassion and accountability. And these things go together, because sometimes when we think about compassion, then we think, well, we're just letting everybody off the hook. No, you can have compassion and accountability within a structure, within a culture. And so within a family, there can be rules, and those rules are usually set by the parents. The parents get to set the rules for the kids. That's how it works. That's how things function. And there is accountability, and yet there is compassion, okay? Because kids are going to mess up. They're going to make mistakes. And so there can be consequences for those mistakes, but there's also compassion. I saw a parent recently talking to their toddler, and over again, this dad was saying, I love you, but you can't do that because that's not safe and you can get hurt. I love you, and that's why I'm telling you this is not safe, because I don't want you to get hurt because I love you. He was really fussing. He was using a strong tone of voice, and this little toddler, she knew that dad was upset because she had done something that was unsafe, but he kept coming back to, I love you. I love you, and that's why I want you to be safe, and that's why I'm being firm with you now. And she was tearing up because she knew dad was mad, but she also kept hearing, I love you. That's compassion with accountability. Now, that's not just with children. That's in every area, that we can show compassion and let people know that we care about them, even though at times we may have to have accountability within our organization, within the business, within the neighborhood. There may need conflicts that need to be addressed. There may be things that happen that we say, no, we just can't do that. We may have to hold people accountable for mistakes they make, and there might have to be consequences. We have that in society. We have laws, and there are consequences if you break those laws. But within that, we don't need to build a society that is just looking to harm people because they messed up. That there have to be consequences. There need to be laws, and there's consequences for those laws when they are broken, and yet we can also be a place of compassion where we try to help people that have messed up rebuild their lives. Whether it's family all the way up to society, we need accountability within our culture. We also need compassion at the same time. We need to, like that loving father, that whole culture needs to say, I love you, I care about you, but you can't do that because that's unsafe for the business, the family, the society. That's not how we can live, but I love you. I care about you. I care about your well-being, but as a whole, we can't allow that. That's compassion and accountability. When you have a healthy culture, you have both. Cultures tend to lose one or the other. Cultures sometimes go so far towards the compassion, there's no accountability. And people can harm each other, and it's just, well, we're family. We have to forgive and forget. We just have to let them hurt us over and over again because we're family, so we just have to forgive. No, there has to be a sense of accountability. There has to be a sense of this is how we're going to live together well. There's a practical side to love as well that says these are the rules by which we're going to live. These are the boundaries that we're going to live within. There's consequences if we don't live within these boundaries. But at the same time, we understand people are going to mess up. There's going to be mistakes. And we don't want to go so far towards the accountability side that we are constantly holding people's feet to the fire for every little mistake and never understand people are human. They're going to make mistakes. There's a balance there of compassion and accountability. And in every culture, in families, neighborhoods, businesses, and society, there's a balance of compassion and accountability. There's boundaries, there's consequences, and yet there is caring, there is love for people within that culture, even when they mess up. The fourth is autonomy, at least to a certain extent. Every person needs to have at least some say-so about the system in which they're living. They need to have some contribution to how that system exists and is run. Now, obviously, again, we're going to have a hierarchy here. Okay, in a business, the CEO gets to say mostly how things are. The board of directors, the managers, the directors, they have a bigger say than some of the lower employees. But if we've got a healthy culture, even the employees have a say-so, have some measure of autonomy and freedom in how they do their job. Some measure of creatability, some measure of creativity, and the ability to do their job in some ways in their own way. Now, that doesn't mean complete freedom, because there has to be a system, especially in systems of work, but there can still be some measure of autonomy, some measure of voice. That's why we have things in businesses like annual reviews. That's not just a time, if it's done well, to say, hey, you messed this up or you did this well, but to also hear from employees of, do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? Do you have any suggestions? Those kinds of things can give people a sense of being part of something. They don't have to be in charge, but they need to be a legitimate part. Even kids in the home, in the family, need a certain level of autonomy. That may mean that within certain limits, they can decorate their room how they want to decorate it. Now, when that child gets to be a teenager, that may be difficult for the parents. There may be things that you just wonder, why would anybody want to decorate their room that way? Because that's what teenagers do. And there has to be limits there. Okay, I get that. That's not complete and total freedom. Autonomy doesn't mean complete and total chaos. It just means that within every healthy culture, people have some measure of contribution, of their own creativity, their own thoughts, to contribute to the whole. We're all in this together. We don't all have the same authority within the structure, but we all have some contribution to how this thing is run, how this exists, that we matter within the culture. And finally, we take that sense of everyone matters to the next level, and that is interdependence. The truth is, in every culture, we're all in this together. Again, there is a hierarchy sometimes. There's authority. Parents have authority over the children. The managers have authority over employees. There are ways in which we function together. However, we're all interdependent. We will succeed as a culture together, or we will fail as a culture together. We will go forward as a family together, or we will fall together. There's that famous statement by Abraham Lincoln that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That actual quote was based on a quote much earlier from Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 3, verse 25. Jesus says, and if a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. This concept's been around a long time, okay? And if you keep digging, you might find other thinkers that said it even before Jesus. The house divided against itself cannot stand. We are all interdependent in every culture. We need each other within a family. We need each other in our businesses, in our neighborhoods, in our culture, in our society. We need each other. And if we are willing to cast people aside because we disagree, if we are willing to cast people aside, we are going to harm our culture. That we can't have a healthy culture if we see people as expendable. Again, there are limits. There have to be boundaries. And some relationships do have to end, even within families. I don't say that lightly. That's a painful thing to say, and it's certainly painful to go through. But no one was meant to be abused. No one was put on this earth to be abused. So abusers sometimes have to be limited or even cut off. But that's going to cause a lot of struggle. And if we are going to have a healthy culture, we have to see our interdependence. That it's not just about the parents running the house. The kids are part of this too. That we're all in this together. And we all need to know we're in it together. That it's not just the executives at a company. It's the employees too. We're all in this together. That it's not about the hierarchy. It's about the interdependence. We all need each other. Within every culture, if we're going to have a thriving culture, we need to understand we need each other. And that motivates us, if we understand that, to overcome some of the differences, to deal with the struggles, and find a way to operate in a healthy way together. If we do all of this, if we show dignity, if we base our relationship on authenticity and truth, if we have compassion with accountability, we have autonomy, every person matters, and we understand that to the point that we know we are interdependent. We need each other. We are all together. A house divided cannot stand. When we get all of this, we have the chance to not only form relationships, but build healthy cultures. And that's what we really need. That's my thoughts today as we are working to build healthy, happy, thriving relationships in every area of life. You can go to my website, markahicks.com, find a lot more stuff, including easy links to buy my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. I want to thank the Learning Love Foundation for sponsoring this show. You can find out more at learninglovefoundation.com. Thank you to my fabulous producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Production, and thank you to all of you for listening. Until next week, love well, everyone.